Hey guys, in this video we'll be talking about is urinary system. Okay, so urinary system consists of four things: kidney, urinary bladder, and urethra. So basically, you know that kidney is bean shaped and it's reddish in color. It is present in retroperitoneal space, which is posterior to the abdominal wall. This is located on the spinal level of T12 to L3, and the right side of the kidney is located a little downside. Okay, and its measurements are something that looks like this. And on the upper portion of it, there is presence of adrenal glands or something called as suprarenal glands. On the medial aspect, there is presence of hilum. The structures that passes through the hilum is renal vein nerve that enters, and the one that exits is renal pelvis. So if you can see this kidney, there is the structure you can see here. This is the hilum. Okay, the structure present here is the hilum, and this kidney has a capsule surrounded to it. So this capsule is basically divided into two things: outer and inner layer. Outer layer and inner layer. Okay, so outer layer is filled with fibroblasts, collagen fibers, and inner is myofibroblasts only, that you have to remember. So if you are talking about kidney, the kidney is divided into two things: outer cortex, inner medulla. So the blood supply, you can see here, the amount of blood supply is 95% of the blood supply is goes to the cortex, and 5% of the blood supply goes to the medulla. Okay, it is reddish brownish color of the pigment. So if you can recall, this is like a little lighter version of the cortex. The reason why it is brown or it's more reddish is because of the blood supply to it. So we'll be discussing more about cortex and renal medulla. So the things that are present is renal corpuscles, proximal straight tubule, proximal collecting tubules, collecting ducts, and collecting tubules. Okay, so the renal corpuscles are basically spherical in shape. Renal corpuscle altogether is present here. This is what we can see is renal corpuscles. So there is presence of glomerulus here. This whole thing is called as glomerulus. This thing here is called as glomerulus, and this glomerulus consists of something called as tuft of capillaries. A lot of capillaries are present here for ultrafiltration. This is where filtration takes place, right? There is afferent coming in, efferent going out. Okay, and the structure that is surrounded to it or acts as a covering to it is the Bowman's capsule. Okay, and the amount of vascular supply in the cortical region is super high. So these cortex is actually divided into two structures: cortical labyrinth and medullary rays. Okay, so medullary rays are also called as MR, medullary rays of Ferry-In. These it shows vertical striations which is 400 to 500 in projects towards the cortex, and it consists of straight tubule and a collecting duct of nephrons. Okay, so further we'll talk about is there is presence of major and minor calyxes. So there is presence of what major calyxes, and there is presence of minor calyx. Okay, minor calyx. So this represents an extension. So this is the one that represents renal pelvis. Okay, this is the so-called extension of it. Okay, and 2 to 3 minor calyxes. So this is 2 to 3 minor calyxes forms one major calyx. Okay, super simple, like super simple. So there are pyramids, like, okay, there is presence of pyramids. What do we need to know about pyramids is there are 8 to 12 pyramids altogether present in one single kidney. Okay, in one single kidney. And the tip of pyramid, if you're talking about pyramid, there is a tip of pyramid. Okay, this part of a pyramid, This particular structure is called as papilla. Papilla is what is a tip of pyramid. Okay, and in this whole pyramid there is a, a structure which is constantly perforated. Okay, constantly perforated by collecting duct, and this area is called as area of brosa. Okay, area of what? Area of cribrosa. Now we'll be further discussing or dividing this particular structure into lobes and lobules. Okay, lobes and lobules. Okay, so what do we need to, what do we have to do we need to know about lobes and lobules is, lobes is basically number of pyramids. Number of pyramids present is called as lobes, and lobules are basically further divided part of lobes. Okay, so if you further divide lobes, further divided, you will get to see is lobules. Okay, so this number of pyramids, this basically is, has two things: medullary pyramids and associated cortical tissues at the base. Associated cortical tissues at the base. Okay, this at the base. And if we are talking about this lobules, so this lobules are basically act as a collecting duct of the nephron. Okay, of nephron, and it drains. Okay, it drains what? It drains blood. Okay, now this, there is presence of medullary rays concept. So this medullary rays are, if you are talking about medullary rays, okay, which is the second part of the kidney. If we are talking about medullary rays are just a collecting duct or group of nephrons, and the group of nephrons. Okay, group of nephrons, collecting duct or group of nephrons, which help in secretory secretion, or let's just say drainage, or let's just say filtration. Okay, and if you further actually tell you this further gives you something called as renal secretory unit. Okay, this is the renal secretory unit in here. So this renal secretory unit is just tells you about the exact amount of secretory, basic unit. Like this is just the basic unit of